Welcome back to the Afterword, a conversation about the future of words. Last week, we learned about the assets that students, parents, and teachers gain through a virtual learning environment. Welcome back to the Afterword Table, Marissa Pasquale, founder and CEO of Mindsets Learning, and Tom Davis, Director of Business Development at the Center for Educational Innovation. So, Marissa, a critical tool in preparing students for the next step is through project-based real-world learning. How do project-based student-chosen activities help with motivation and engagement? And how can we facilitate those lessons in a virtual setting?
Oh, what a great question. You know, in 10 years that I've been in education technology, this is the place we started. The first time I walked into a classroom with a fresh, open mind, and we saw collaboration and project-based learning, and then we tracked its performance, and it was the most memorable thing these students recalled at the end of the year, not just 1 year, but year after year after year, cohort after cohort. It's proven to be a way of creating memory, engagement, and academic performance, improvement in academic performance. Now in a virtual environment, the challenge is, it's always been a challenge, you know, to allow and enable the time and the teaching flexibility for bringing project-based learning into classrooms. Because of the way schools have been structured with 45-minute class blocks. At Mindsets, we've supported that by bringing these experiences into 45-minute episodes through the Mindsets challenges. There's two ways of going forward. Products like Mindsets can be used that are encouraging real-world thinking, but doing it in a short, sharp manner, ready to go for a teacher and a group of students to engage with. Online. So those tools are there now for teachers. To supplement that with projects really needs to engage the family. So, for example, if you're learning fraction, you know, through the idea of, say, making pizza and learning about the portions of pizza and preferences, which types of pizzas different students will want, students might want to make a pizza. And so that would be great, but you've got to engage families too, to enable and to prepare the students to do the experiments in the kitchen to make that pizza. Or for outside measuring things, again, you know, we need to support them with those tools and allow them time. So the challenge is to design lessons where teachers can give students a challenge at the beginning of a week, and the challenge which they can actually practice first through the computer, and then spend a few days to go and make or create that real-world experience they've just learnt about around the home or close to their community, and then report back, make a presentation, pitch it back, create a video, whatever it might be, back to the class. So it's a beautiful time to be able to do this, and we're excited to see how teachers will be able to open up their curriculum to enable students with hands-on learning like that.
I love that. Project-based learning is my favorite way to engage. And Tom, you were talking a little bit about a project with the garden, and to me, that's again real-world learning and wonderful project-based learning opportunities. But, and Tom, you kind of mentioned this on our last episode, teachers and parents and communities, as we begin school, what are some of the pitfalls and concerns surrounding virtual education? We've talked about it a little bit, but I kind of want to drill down because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you are, education has become quite a political hot topic right now. And there are lots of pitfalls with communities, and you've mentioned a few, Tom.
That's another great question. I think here's the thing I want to make sure we all understand that, and I really believe this, if we can't measure something, we can't manage it. So in my mind, everything has to be measured. We have to have metrics behind things that we're going to be doing. And now nothing changes with the virtual situation. We have to be able to track kids. Are they online? Are they taking classes? Are we able to communicate with parents the same way? I follow Tom Vander Ark's blog, and he talks about 4 really critical things in the next decade as we move forward in this era. One is the idea of mindfulness. Obviously, we got to start thinking about everything we do. And I see districts across the country scrambling right now to find curriculum, SEL curriculum, or embedding their own SEL thoughts into their existing content. This is so important, being mindful. The second area he talks about is being lifelong learners. And being a lifelong learner means, as a teacher, I'm always going to be learning for new things and looking for new things and be helping in my classroom and not stopping learning. We have to be lifelong learners. The third area that's really important that applies to this question you asked is the ability to be analytical and look at the quantitative data that's out there. In so many districts that I see right now, we have all these disparate databases of different resources, of different programs that help kids with reading and math and whatever. So as a teacher, if I was to go back in the classroom, as I mentioned earlier, I'd have to become more adept at taking all these resources that I have, but understanding the data points and the metrics behind these resources, and I look at this quantitative data to make better decisions for my kids and my classes. So I think as a group of all of us, if I was to be a principal, I'd go back, I'd make my team do professional development around quantitative analytics and taking data points and making better decisions on how we're going to be able to move forward with our kids. And I think those are some of the main things that I think resonate with me when we talk about moving forward in this era. And I do think that we're going to be in this for a while. And I do think that most smart school leaders will have a plan B for virtual learning as we continue to move forward. It's going to have to be there no matter what.
As we think about virtual school settings and the fact that, it's looking like 30%, 50% of kids are going to be in this, there's a myriad of programs, there's educator bias, there are reams of information for parents to decipher. How can experts help sift through all the stories to really discern fact as opposed to legend and hype in education in order to secure a positive outcome for learners, Tom?
No, I really think that's going to be the biggest issue. I'm going to go back to analytics. We have to be able to measure. We have to be able to manage certain things. I think one of the things that will help us a lot is if we get some of these grants funded to look at pilots or look at different scenarios, incubate some ideas, and then look at the data points we can pull out of that to get through all the different, like you mentioned, myriad programs and misinformation out there. It's going to come down to what programs that we see are working, what are not working. Develops just a kind of a clearinghouse for us to be able to get through all these different misinformation and things that are going on out there that will help us decide. Because one of the things we're not very good at in education in my career, doing this over 35, going on 40 years now, is we don't share information real well. We work in silos a lot. And, something's working here, it's hard for us to share it. We got to bust up that thought process, that mindset of being more collaborative. We have to be more collaborative and share best practices. And we have to get through all this. And I think this COVID-19 issue will maybe help us get there more in terms of sharing best practices and ideas. But it's going to come down to, in my view, analytics and looking at what works and doesn't work and doing more impact studies on programs and services that are available.
Excellent. Marissa, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that all correct teachers know that they check in with their students, and students' voices really need to be heard. Students are often forgotten, but they actually can be and often are the source of what works. Just ask the student, and you'll find that students will have an opinion, and because they're a key part of learning, their voices need to be heard, their opinions need to be heard. What might be seen to work at a state level or a district level, you really got to put those things in the hands of the student and put the student first. Ask them first. And I think there needs to be more work done at student-centered measurement and analytics, building on what Tom has just said. Usually those analytics treat the student very passively as sort of like, a data point rather than being the centre of the design of the experiments or the research done. And we've seen this too over the summer, the rise of the student. We've seen students, to our surprise, taking on more math learning organically through mindsets because of these real-world problems and challenges and projects we offer. That just embraced it. And I think that we need to develop student-led metrics that matter to them as well and put that in the mix.
I really appreciate that idea of student-led metrics. And again, we need the numbers, we need the hard data, but we also need the qualitative, the stories, the penny dropped, and you see the child just erupt with, oh wow, I finally got this. And so those are also very important data points as well. Thank you for sharing that.
We call it the aha moment.
Those are the best. So where do you see virtual education heading for the future? You've mentioned a little bit with mobile devices, but where do you see it going?
So, it's like lessons learned in the real world, in the business world. We're learning a lot. We don't have to go to an office anymore. A lot of stuff's getting done on Zoom and in our offices, in our homes. So I think where virtual education is going to head, it's going to be just in time when I need it. Because one of the things we often talk about are making sure that our students, when they do get out of our school systems, are well-versed in social emotional learning, P21 skills, the 6 C's, if you will, and soft skills, or what we call workforce development skills. And so I think with the graduates today coming out of our school systems, their job is going to be to constantly be learning, because they're going to have to learn new skill sets, because they're probably going to have 25 more jobs before they retire. So it's going to be all about, in my opinion, teaching kids to learn new sets of skills to get the next job. So I do believe in the world of work, we have to do a lot more making sure our kids are adaptable and that they're lifelong learners, and that they're constantly learning new skill sets to adapt and be able to get that new job. So that's where I think virtual education could be very helpful. I think it's going to be just-in-time education, where we get what we need when we need it, from our offices and our homes. We don't have to be at a place called school anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Learn how to learn. We don't want to just keep throwing fish out. We want to give them the pole. We want to teach them how to fish to become that lifelong learner. Really appreciate that.
Well, we have a signature question that we'd like to wind up all of our interviews with, and that is, what is a metaphor that helps us understand virtual education?
Well, we love that question. It takes a village. And education not only takes a village, but it's also a sport. And if you think about how sports have responded through this period, created what is like sports bubbles or sports hubs. And you look at basketball, if I get my accent right, basketball in Orlando, they're playing in hubs now. And to keep, the idea of a hub is to keep the players safe and to keep the game going. And so when we think about that as a village, sports plays as a village, education is very similar, that we will be expanding this idea of the village, that every student and family needs to be part of a village. We need to open up our homes as students are learning and embrace this idea of the village and support each other and give students the freedom to be able to move around, not just confined in a small space, but to be able to move around in a safe way, in a safe bubble. And so that's our metaphor. Education as a village, and a village like a sport.
Love it. Awesome.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, my thoughts concur. I concur completely with Marissa's thoughts. As a former basketball player, still playing, by the way. I love that metaphor around sports. And the number one thing parents want to make sure their kids are safe. They got to be in safe environments. That's the number one thing they want about their kids. Everything else is secondary. Safety is number one. They got to make sure kids are safe in their secure in their environment. So I think that's the work that has to get done in making sure when we do re-enter school that our schools are deep cleaned, that they're testing for air quality and surface quality using ATP technology, if they will, and getting ahead of all this so that when I do send my third grader back to school, that I know that place is safe. So those are all thoughts as we move forward in this pandemic that we got to think about for sure. And then making sure that the education is going to be just as safe. And so we're figuring that out as we go along. So all of us are in this together, is what Marissa said. Let's figure it out together.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So Marissa, you've spoken a little bit about mindsets, and where can we find your company? And we will connect it to our show notes, but just let listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, so head on over to mindsets.com, and there you'll see what we're doing with schools and districts and teachers, and also there's a special section for families as well. If anyone wants to email me, most happy, love having conversations. Marissa at mindsets.com, Marissa at mindsets.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Twitter at Go Mindset, and Instagram as well at Go Mindsets.
Perfect. Wonderful. How about you, Tom? How can we connect with you?
So you can find me at the Center for Educational Innovation, which is www.the-cei.org. And my email is tomdavis70@gmail.com. And just to give you an overview, you can also, if you have any interest in working with us, because we're a 501c3 nonprofit, we have 6 of our own schools that we call incubator schools. We can try new things and strategies. So if anybody has an interest in trying something new, a new strategy in K-12 education, we're happy to talk to them about, incubating some ideas or strategies in our schools. We're thinking about after school or over the weekends. We're not going to disrupt kids during the day, but programs that will work after school or not during school hours is what we're thinking about. So we have an office in New York, and I'm setting up one in San Diego. So we have an East Coast, West Coast presence, and that's how we can help serve.
Wonderful. Incubator schools. Love it.
And just to be clear, Marissa, right now, if you're a public school, private school, charter school, homeschooler, parent who wants to supplement whatever's going on for your child, it is possible to get 1 or 2 Mindsets challenges for free. See if you like them before you purchase the whole library, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So over summer, we've had great success with our Open Summer Challenges. We've offered 3 challenges there for free, and also we're offering prizes for those teachers, students, and parents who complete a survey. And that's running till August 28th. And we'll always have a free challenge on the site for any parent or family. And then educators and teachers, we have special plans where they can pilot as well. So, yeah, feel free to drop me an email, Marissa at mindsets.com, and we'll look after you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I have so many parents right now on my list who will be getting emails from contacting you.
This was a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Marissa.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Join us next week as we talk about language and social code switching with Dr. Miles Durkee and Dr. Araceli LaRoche. Before we go, we want to share a review from Deb on Apple Podcasts and ask you as our listeners to please consider leaving a review like this one. Here's what Deb wrote. Great fun with a big dose of true life stories. Amy and Holland are a wonderful duo for the creation of such a well-designed podcast. I enjoyed being part of the story as together we explored the state of women in politics and how the system works from the inside. So we loved getting to know Deb and Phyllis, and they did a great episode with us. So look that one up if you haven't had a chance to listen to them. In the meantime, please rate us on Apple Podcasts and become a subscriber to the AfterwordPodcast.com. It does help us keep the conversations going. And as always, remember that you are welcome at our table.